Alrighty folks, this is a long overdue video response to My Pie 101. This past weekend, or let's just say it was this past weekend, I watched a family saga. Some documentary filmmakers were following 3 generations of the specific family for a certain amount of time. Whether it was intentional or not, they were contrasting how the grandparent generation was relating to the child generation against how the child generation was relating to the grandchild generation. There was this one female family member who was in the middle generation. I cannot remember her name, so we'll just call her Jackie. Jackie had a little boy named Jeffer. His name I remember. Jackie was a young mother who had gotten pregnant very early on into her adulthood. Maybe that had something to do with it, or maybe she was just a bitch. But she couldn't be bothered with her own son. Yes, she would feed and groom him, but that about it. She would let him wander off by himself for hours, and she wasn't worried about it. Most of the time, Jeffer would come back okay. Some days he would come back with a scratch or two from getting in a fight or falling off of something. But some days he would come home and it was just obvious that someone had used him as their own personal punching bag. He'd be limping, he'd have several open wounds, and his internal organs had been pounded so bad that he would have these strings of blood hanging out of his nose. And they were hanging kind of like snot, except it was blood. Jackie didn't seem to be all that concerned when her son would come home like that. She would just clean him up, feed him, put him to bed, but then the next day she would just let him wander right back off, and then he would get beat up, and there would be blood strings hanging out of his nose again. And this went on for many, many weeks until finally he came home and he'd just been beaten up so bad. It was worse than any other time before. Jackie cleaned him up as best she could, but his fur was still stained with blood. She tried to feed him, but he wouldn't eat. By the morning, he was dead. Now let me ask you, what killed that little kangaroo? I did mention these were kangaroos, right? Well, I'm telling you now. They're kangaroos, okay? Stay with me. Anyway, what killed that little kangaroo? Well, what killed him was whatever beat him up. No, what killed him was bad parenting. Jackie the kangaroo was a piss-poor mother. She was great at taking care of herself. She had a beautiful coat, there were no scratches or wounds on her, she was well fed. But when it came to taking care of Jeffer, she had better things to do. Stories like Jeffer's happen every day, not just to kangaroos but throughout the whole animal kingdom. Yes, nature has bad mothers. Some offspring are raised by bad mothers but somehow manage to survive. Some of them get killed somewhere along the way. Some of the offspring are rejected by their mothers at birth. I guess the mother decided that this baby was going to be too much of a cramp on her style. And then some mothers outright kill their babies at birth, whether they eat them or sit on them or something. The wild animal rescue isn't just for animals who are victims of pollution or got their foot stuck in a trap or something. It's also for babies who have been rejected by their mothers. Baby? What baby? I ain't had no baby. Now, humans are also animals. And just like every other animal population on the face of this planet, some of the females are not fit to be mothers. Some of them are not fit at all and never will be, and some of them are just not fit at this time. Just because you're pregnant or can get pregnant doesn't mean you're ready to be a mother. So what's this video about? Kangaroos? Not really. It's about abortion. I'm not going to turn this into a typical abortion video where both sides argue the pros and cons that we've heard a million times over. Abortion is murder. Versus my body, my choice. Instead, I'm going to give a few reasons why I'm pro-choice as it pertains to the point of this video. After that, I have a few questions for a certain group of people who are on the anti-abortion side of the fence. I think motherhood is a very important job, if not the most important job. And it's the last job that you need to be doing when you don't want to do it. How much more loudly can a woman scream, "I don't want to be a mother," than to have an abortion? I've heard people say, well, if she's going to go out there and get pregnant, she should have to live with the consequences. Excuse me, a child is not a punishment. It's not like, oh, well, you peed in the bed because you were too lazy to get up and go to the bathroom, so now you have to sleep in that pissy bed. Children should be born to parents who want them, and dare I say, who are ready for them. That means they're able to take care of them and feed them not only physically with food, but mentally. Unwanted children are more likely to be poorly raised, more likely to be left unsupervised, more likely to live below the poverty level, and more prone to crime and getting on drugs. I'm not suggesting that anybody who doesn't want to have an abortion should have one, but anybody who does want to have one, I support their choice. Now, I have a question for some of the people who like to bring up the high abortion rate for black women. I have actually seen some of these people make videos complaining about that, but they will also make videos complaining about single mothers. That's contradictory. How can you be against abortion and against single mothers? Well, then she shouldn't have got pregnant in the first place. All right, fine. She messed up. She had a one-night stand. She was whoring around. Whatever you want to say. But she's pregnant now. You don't want her to have an abortion, but then you're going to talk about her like a dog for being a single mother. You want to complain about how single mothers are fucking up the kids and therefore fucking up the community. Then you go further to say, I don't date single mothers. So if every man felt like you, which of course not all do, but let's just say that they did. And let's just say that the father isn't around for whatever reason. These children are going to be doomed to growing up without a father. And we all know the problems that that causes. So let me recap. You want to call the woman a slut and a whore for getting pregnant outside of wedlock. If she has an abortion, you want to call her a murderer. If she keeps the baby, you shun her because I ain't fucking with no single mothers, and I'm not saying that you should. I'm just pointing out the inconsistency. Some of these men even go so far as to tell other men, don't mess with no single mothers. It ain't your job to raise some other man's kids. At that point, I gotta ask you guys, why do you want those children here? Why do you want them to be born? Some people say because the population growth for blacks in the United States has stagnated. So, I'll admit that at this time, Black America does have quite a few problems. None of them is that we don't have enough people. And let's just say that we did need more people. We don't need more people who are raised by single moms who didn't want them. She had an abortion. She didn't want the child. And some people love to quote the statistic that black women have aborted 13 million babies since whatever the year was. I don't understand why you're crying for the loss of these babies when if they were here, you wouldn't want anything to do with them. That ain't my baby. I ain't gonna raise nobody else's baby. And again, if you feel that way, you are well within your rights. You are under no obligation to take care of anyone else's child. However, if you're going to take that stance and say that these kids are none of my business because they're not mine, then why don't you also take that stance before they're born? If a child wants to abort her baby that you wouldn't raise anyway, that is her business. It's none of your concern. If it ain't your concern after birth, it's not your concern before birth. The overwhelming majority of women who have abortions are single or in an unstable relationship at the time of the abortion. Why do we need more children born to single mothers? Then you got the nerve to complain about matriarchal systems. But besides that, why do we need more children who are more likely to be poorly supervised, more likely to live below the poverty level, and possibly need some kind of public assistance? If those 13 million children had been born, we would have a higher crime rate. Why? Because they're black? No, because they would have been born to single mothers. Children raised by single mothers are more prone to delinquent behavior. As a matter of fact, if you take the white crime rate and the black crime rate and control for illegitimacy, there would be almost no difference between the two crime rates. Now I'm sure somebody out there is saying, wait a minute, weren't you born to a single mother? Ah ha ha! Well, yes, I was born to a single mother, but my mother wanted me. I'm talking about the women who want abortions. If a woman wants an abortion of her own free will, I support that. You don't need to be a mother if you don't want to be. Well, what about adoption? Well, I thought you said you weren't going to take care of anybody else's kids. Are you going to adopt some kids? If your answer is no, then again, shut up. If you're saying don't abort the kids because you want them, okay, fine. But if you want the kids born just so we can have more numbers, or because that slut bitch laid up and got pregnant so she should have to raise the baby, or because the Lord said, please don't say because the Lord said. The Lord killed so many quote-unquote innocent people in the Bible, so don't tell me what the Lord said, because I seen what he did. And for all you people arguing about, well, we need more people or whatever, in this age of weapons of mass destruction, numbers just don't go as far as they used to go. Example, South Africa during apartheid. A white minority ruling over a black majority. I rest my case. Damn the numbers. Quality, not quantity. So again, this isn't necessarily an abortion debate. I'm just asking certain people, how can you be anti-abortion and anti-single mother and anti-raising somebody else's kids? And why would we need 13 million more people whose mothers didn't want them and who would probably be raised by single mothers? You have all the data in front of you about the risk factors for children raised by single mothers. So if y'all could just handle those questions for me, I thank you kindly.